Get ready and start your engines for our 6th annual Aviation Month on Savvy Business Radio with some of the top experts in the aviation community. Today we're joined by pilot business owner Michael Sciarra, sharing his harrowing experiences with U.S. immigration. We'll also discuss solutions and what listeners going through the same or similar situation might be able to do to help themselves. Hi, Michael. Welcome to Savvy Business Radio for our Heartbeat of the World segment. I'm so grateful to have you out here this evening. How are you?
Hanging in there. Hanging in there.
I know. We had met about a year and a half ago at your wonderful lounge that you have, a pilot lounge. And we had a wonderful chat where you told us about how you got started, and it was a fun place. And then recently you reached out to me and said you were having some problems with immigration. And I was, wow. You said, can I come on your show and talk about it? And we have this new segment that really focuses on different issues hitting the entire citizens of this country. And some of the things that were very concerning to the whole country was things like immigration, terrorism, war, finances, you name it. And so when you said you want to come on and talk about your very harrowing story about immigration, I thought, well, we definitely have to have you out. So before we go to sharing all of those details, please share with the audience a little bit about your backstory, a little bit about who you are, how you came to where you are today.
Absolutely. Well, I've always had a really big heart for aviation. And, kind of growing up as a kid, I always wanted to be the next Navy pilot, the next great aviator, the next guy really contributing to our nation, really to protect the nation, make sure that it's safe and secure, and that everybody has a good life. And, I came across this airport, and, things were really just, the buildings were falling apart. Nothing was really going, and I kind of saw it as a chance and an opportunity to really take the steps to, how do I say this, rebuild the airport, come up with a neat idea, and potentially maybe take this idea to airports, not just across the United States, but across the world. And, I think we have this pilot shortage in the United States of America, and, a lot of, I guess some of the big thinkers, from both the Defense Department and, the civilian aspects of aviation, really lately they've been talking about the quality of life. And, the quality of life, it's composed of so many variables. I mean, we think back to, the white picket fence, the family, the dog, just everybody going to the nice school, the neighbors, and even a little bit of excitement of keeping up with the Joneses. But I think what we're running into now in this nation is so much overregulation, so much stress that this quality of life, it's really being greatly affected in so many different variables. I think that the project at the airport really started shedding a lot of light onto the problems that we were up against, and everywhere from permits and fees and fines and red tape, and just not even financially being able to make this thing a reality, which we built an amazing facility. But to have gotten through all of that and had this situation all of a sudden with immigration that jumped up right in the middle of everything with my wife. This was kind of like the eye-awakening moment that said, hey, what is really going on in our country? Why is it that, a husband and wife who worked really hard, started with this, airport project, and, put their life and soul in it, and, believed in our country, believed in our flag, how could things have gotten so out of hand that when we look at the bank accounts, there's nothing left? We have all these people that are, coming after us for taxes and fines and fees and red tape, and everybody's got their hand out, and you're sitting there as a budding entrepreneur saying, I can only give so much left. And so I think really everything came to a head almost, about 8 weeks ago after me and my wife, we said, we're going to go maybe move someplace where things are a little bit more calm. Let's kind of regroup. Let's rethink. We got down to South Carolina, and we had been working on her immigration paperwork for almost 2 years now.
Wow.
I mean, just trying to track down the right lawyer, and then, listening to the system and listening to everybody's cases, and, listening to everybody's fears, and, to the point where we felt that we really had the right lawyer, to find that, there was even more work that we needed to do. And, just like what we went through with the airport, like every time we turned around, there was another problem. That's exactly what happened with this immigration.
Wow. And Michael, this is just amazing to me. And recently I talked to someone who's a business owner in Texas, and he said, what's amazing to me, you mentioned how many regulations affect all citizens, not just ones starting businesses, entrepreneurs, and even people trying to get their immigration papers in order. But there's so many laws on the books. This guy from Texas said, an entrepreneur, he said that we do on a daily basis, all citizens break the law every day without realizing it, because there's so many regulations on the books. How do we ever get
Absolutely.
Yeah, how do we ever get to the land of the free becoming regulation land? On everywhere you step, there's a penalty, a fee, and some sort of surcharge or violation that have to pay a fine for. How do we ever get to this point?
Absolutely. That's a really good point. And, with these new changes from, the executive orders that have come down from the president, all these laws and rules are affecting immigration in a way that they've never affected it before. The most simplest thing, and a very good example before we jump into my wife's situation, the most simplest misdemeanor, like maybe a shoplifting from 2013 or a DUI or unpaid taxes, or maybe you were running a business and you had independent contractors that didn't pay their taxes and you got audited. All of these things have led to people being detained alongside of my wife, and it's very scary. I think that everybody is trying to live at the end of the day, and I have heard in certain political circles kind of jokes about, well, we'll put a contract down, we'll make it a law or make it a regulation, we'll make everybody apply to it, especially in aviation. That's a very good example. We have this ADS-B mandate that's coming out now. Obviously, for a lot of listeners out there may not know what ADS-B is, but it's a new, the best way I could simplify it is it's a new standard, it's a new equipment that all of the airplanes operating in the United States airspace are going to need to be equipped with by 2020. And if they're not equipped with this technology and they haven't bought it, well, here we go again. More fines, more penalties, more.
And it's a pricey thing you need to outfit your airplane with. It's not cheap, and nothing in aviation is cheap, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not cheap in any way, shape, or form. So, you look at these aspiring entrepreneurs in aviation, or just inspiring entrepreneurs in general, and, they just want to start a business, and you look at the cost outlay just to get on the books, and you're like, wow. Yeah. Now, a really good example of something I've run into is that in a lot of my travels around the world that started back around 2006, I ran into a lot of young American entrepreneurs, not in the United States of America. And I remember I was in Iceland, out of all places, and I noticed a gentleman had some very interesting tools that I wanted to find out about. I was hoping I could speak with him in broken English, and I approached this man, and in broken English, I said, "Hey, where did you buy these tools?" And with a perfect New Jersey accent, he responds, "Oh, hey, I got them at the hardware store around the corner from here." And I'm like, what are you doing in Iceland? And he says, "Oh, it's really funny that you should ask about that." He said, "You ever try and open a business in America?" I said, "Yes, I've been trying for quite some time. And boy, I'll tell you, I got beat up. I got stuck with an unbelievable amount of debt. And, every time I turned around, there was another person trying to shut me down and ruin my business." I said, "Yeah." I said, "What's really funny?" I said, "What's that?" He says, "Here, this is a part of Europe. And here I get 100,000 euro to start a business, and I get 10 years of tax breaks." That's what he was telling me. Now, whether it may be 100% true, just getting any tax break as a business owner by not fitting in the typical minority group that we would normally see applied in the United States of America, which I don't qualify for anything in these minority groups to get any of these tax credits or tax breaks. And I've seen so many of my friends that choose to put their business in their wife's name or in a family member that served for our country just to survive. And I sit there and say, wow, how did we get there as a country? And I think, Christine, that it's survival. Everybody is trying to do what they need to do to survive. And I think it's come to a point where we need to start simplifying things. We really need to start simplifying things because like what we have now happening with my wife, we as a country, we're moving into human rights violations.
Big time, in many different directions. And we have someone that's coming up before you actually talking about the Fair Tax Act, where they're trying to get a simpler tax passed where we don't have this craziness where you're sitting there for 10 hours trying to figure out your short form, let alone the business form or long form. It's just insanity. Why is it that we just don't have one flat fee? Or that's my idea. 10% down the line, throw it on the table, bam, we're done with the day. But on top of it, if we go back and look at the Constitution that started this great and wonderful country, taxes are not even constitutional. I know most people don't even look back at that, but the government should not be charging us money, and they should not be our daddy. We should, small businesses should be running and working together to make this country great, where, a small business like you, a small business like myself, Michael, where we provide services and valued information, products, services that people need, they pay us for it, and bam, we take care of this country. But we shouldn't have a government that's nannying us, taking our money out of our pocket that we work for, and as business owners, they take even more money. And that's one thing I think a lot of people who don't own a business don't realize. A lot of people who go and get a paycheck. It's great that you get a paycheck, and if you don't want to own a business, but then there's someone like you and me who are taking the risk to put a business out there, to get jobs out there so that people have financial income, but then we get hit by the government taxing us even harder. And I think a lot of people think that if you own a business, you're, automatically rich, and that's not true. Unless you've gotten to the point where you're making billions or multi-millions, you're not, raking hand over fist. You're actually getting hit quite hard with a lot of taxes, a lot of penalties, a lot of violations. So what do you see is a way we can start to fix this? Now, you mentioned that your wife is going through tremendous difficulty. Share a little bit about that, and then we'll go into some of the solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe, the best way to do about this is actually jump really right into the solution, because sometimes the best thing to do is rip the Band-Aid off. And where I'm going with that is that, we look at our infrastructure that's falling apart. And one thing that, I can say that really shocked me out of this presidency was when the president was standing with an advisor in respect to our roadways. And this gentleman held up a very large piece of paper, and he said, this is what it takes basically to get things moving with our federal roadways. And that's probably one of the best examples I can give. We have so many Band-Aids that we have slapped on top of our way of life. Literally, as the people in this country, it is one Band-Aid after another. So maybe we just need to get in there and rip the Band-Aid right off. When you first met me, you met me at the South Jersey Regional Airport with, a facility that we had built, and I had kind of put together this flight school and this coffee lounge and put the two together. And really the main reason for it was 15 minutes over coffee. If you could not explain to me something in 15 minutes over coffee, which is about the average attention span of most individuals when it comes to actually wanting to take the time to learn something. I know a lot of us have ADHD and we're always jumping around all over the place, but 15 minutes is really, that's what it should take to explain anything. If it's immigration, if it's starting a new business, if it is, maybe just getting your kids enrolled in school, or even just a simple parent-teacher conference. It should be 15 minutes over coffee. It should be very simple. This is what we need to do. This is the direction that we need to go. We have to start tearing these Band-Aids off to get it to the point where it's just 15 minutes over coffee, simple. We're going to explain it so we can empower the next generation to get out there and just say, hey, I understand this. And, with immigration, hey, I understand this. Or even the people that are working within immigration, because, you may be really shocked to hear this, but even after this atrocity that my wife has gone through, I side with even the people that are working within ICE, that are working within USCIS, that are working within the Department of Justice, and even the Ombudsman's office that, it is more geared towards USCIS, and this is the Ombudsman office that is within the Department of Homeland Security. But, I mean, think about that. I mentioned one word, immigration. And then all of a sudden I just mentioned ICE, Ombudsman's office, Department of Homeland Security, Department of Justice. We have all these different band-aids, all these different things in here. And I mean, does that really sound like 15 minutes over coffee?
Yeah. Well,
it's not.
Do we really need all those offices? Seriously. It's kind of like what we've looked at, the FAR, the FAR, the regulations for aviation. Generally, when aviation was first started, it was a paved. It was a couple of items. Now, of course, aviation was brand spanking new. People were just going out there and basically just winging it. But today, the FAR is insanely thick. It's like, I think 3 inches thick. It's crazy. And thin pages, like legal pages. And I'm thinking, how do we get to the point where now our aviation regulations are like 3 inches thick of legal paper, really thin paper of all these regulations that we have to know and understand to fly an airplane and to fly in airspace is crazy. And what do these regulations do? Are they keeping us safe? Do we really need all these regulations, all these, the FAR, the TSA, all this stuff? I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, I think really, I always said, this one concept, if you make it, you take it. If you make a rule, you got to get one off. I really feel in ripping the Band-Aid off, we have to cap how many laws there are in our nation, period. And if somebody wants to come out there and come up with a new idea, if you're going to make one, then you're going to have to take one. Now, we see this administration, which I believe there's a nickname that's given to Vice President Pence, Hoosier. And he actually was a big proponent for almost a similar idea. For every law you make, you got to take 2 off the books. And I really support this. We've got too much stuff going on, and it's time that we take a lot of this stuff off. But maybe before we even say we're going to take 2 off, maybe we need to scrap 1/3. I mean, literally 1/3 of the regulations. We may even find in scrapping 1/3 of the regulations that nobody's even listening to or cares about. I mean, I've heard rumors of, like stuff that goes back to, when we had horse and buggies, and that actually still, it's crazy, horse and buggies, but, that still goes back to our auto industry with licenses for carriage manufacturing that, these auto manufacturers are under. And just too many regulations. Are they really doing anything? I say no. Yeah. And what gets really scary is when all of a sudden somebody says, we are going to interpolate these regulations strictly. And in the eyes of immigration, that's where things got really scary about 8 weeks ago.
Wow.
And
so are you saying that they took like an older law or regulation and applied it to your guys' situation? What happened there?
Well, I feel that, there's discretion at the end of the day with all agencies. This discretion really is, yes, we have this law, but, are we going to enforce this law? And I think we may need more discretion knowing that we have so many laws on the books. I believe the FAA even actually moved into not we're going to punish you phase, but we're going to educate you in what you've done wrong, because there are so many regulations and the average young pilot coming out of the door can barely understand that. I think we need to see more of this in government. We don't need stricter adherence. I mean, granted, yes, there's a lot of bad people that are out there. Yes, immigration is a mess, but taking all these kids on DACA and just saying, oh, we're scrapping this program, or, all these people that have been in our country for such a long time. I just heard recently that they are deporting a poor man who has a son or a family member suffering from autism. And he's been in this country, I believe, for over 20 years. I think him and his wife are 24 years married or something. And they're sending him back to Mexico. And he hasn't been in Mexico for years. I mean, where is the humanitarian aspect of it?
Now, he didn't commit any crime. He's just a citizen or not a citizen that's being sent back. They didn't find anything that he did some sort of crime or anything, right? Or
in his particular case, I'm not 100% sure, because I believe he was taken during a raid. I don't think that there was anything in his particular case. Now, I have seen some cases where people have done some things, but they're not bad things. They're not terrible things. And to be honest with you, because we have all this overregulation, some of these things, nobody would even know about it when we wrote these immigration laws many years ago.
Yeah.
You know, in the case of my wife, there was something that was sitting out there that we had no clue about. My wife, you know, in 2009, she had been married to another man, and you know, it didn't last very long. And you know, I think there's a lot of people in this country that can say they're on marriage 2, marriage 3. It happens. It's a journey in life to find your life partner, and you know, we can't. You know, when we're younger, I think all of us can agree we make really stupid mistakes.
Yeah.
And so, you know, here she is in this country, not really speaking English, not really understanding what's going on. And boy, in our country, with all the regulations we have, I can't even imagine how so many people make it in our country who, you know, really don't speak English. I mean, it's amazing. But people do. And, you know, during that immigration process, you know, her and her husband separated. You know, I just don't think that they agreed. They didn't understand what was going on or whatever it may be. But, you know, that's the past. They departed from each other. But it was during the process of immigration that was taking place. And, you know, what she had in her mind as to what was going on was not actually really what was going on. And that was in 2009 going into 2010.
Now, to stop you, was it the fact that the relationship didn't end and she didn't realize it? I mean, what ended up happening that it didn't really end, or what happened between that agreement?
You know, I think they really found out about each other a little bit more than they wanted to find out about each other and their past. And, you know, I think it was my wife took the stance of she was just leaving. And, you know, whatever the reason may be for something not working out, she left this individual. She went to a completely different state. She stayed in this state thereafter, like many other people do. And, you know, she had overstayed her visa, and, you know, you could imagine, you know, here, this is a person that had been by my side since 2013. And, you know, it was a friendship that began to develop into more and more, and, you know, things began to build. And, you know, by the time we got married, and I found out about the paperwork, I said to myself, well, you know, I deal in a lot of advocacy work. I'm constantly working with the government and aviation. We have no choice. The second we get involved in aerospace, the government's in our back pocket at the airports, and rightfully so. I mean, we have to make sure our airports are secure. I mean, the safety risk is huge. And, you know, again, back to like what you say, I mean, there's probably so many laws that we break every day. You know, we really have a community, I think, to watch after each other. I really do believe that. And we really try and keep the airfield safe. But, you know, you find out about this thing with this paperwork, and you say, okay, well, you're married to me now, you know, you're entitled to a green card. You know, we have this whole thing that immigration is founded upon family unity. So let's find the right attorney. Let's figure this out, because I don't understand any of this paperwork. And let's go through it. So eventually, you know, we found the right person. And but, you know, this is where we start really running into problems.
Okay.
You know, one of the first things off the bat was this medical screening. And so my wife, she goes and she gets this medical screening, and she comes back from the medical screening, and she tells me that she was injected in the frontal abdomen, lower abdomen, with a shot. And
what kind of shot?
Like, wait, exactly. She's telling me it's some type of vaccine, and I'm thinking to myself, no, I've never been injected with a vaccine in my frontal abdomen. Christine, have you ever been injected in your frontal abdomen with a shot for a vaccine?
No, and I know they're making up new vaccines every day, but hot darn no.
So I start talking to some friends of mine who are doctors, and they all start, well, I hear they inject birth control there. And I said, what do you mean they inject birth control there? And they said, well, we've heard about it. There's a couple other things for, trying to get to fatty tissue or something along those lines. But, and I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Well, a month goes by and my wife says, hey, there's a problem. And I said, what do you mean there's a problem? She said, well, my cycle's off. And I said, okay. Then a second month, and then a third month. And my friends that are doctors start saying, Mike, we think she was injected with birth control.
Wow. Was it a type of birth control that's, I've heard of these new birth control thing where it's like a quarter, like every 3 to 4 months. Is that what they did?
That's what we suspect. But the question is, how do you prove something like that?
Well, I would think doctors should be able to, if they inject it up in there, they should be able to go to another doctor and have them confirm it. But that sounds like that's just wrong. You don't do that to someone's body.
You don't do that to somebody. And if you're injecting them with a vaccine that's causing the same problem, that's still also a problem. You're forcing somebody to basically get vaccinated to become a part of this country. What if that's against their religion? This is where we really start stepping into human rights violations. What are you doing here? Are you injecting somebody with birth control? Are you giving them a vaccine that's causing them to miss their cycle? I mean, we haven't had our family yet. So if there is, something that's disrupting that cycle, that's, possibly affecting our chances for a healthy birth.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, more and more people, I think you might have heard in some states are actually requiring, I think California, that the kids don't have a vaccine. They're not allowed in the school. Now, I had never had a problem with vaccines until I saw recently just how many they're giving to children. Now, I grew up, and I know you grew up with vaccines, before you went to school, you got a few vaccines. But now it's like, I don't know, 29, 30 for little kids and infants. And it's become insane. It's become a big money-making scheme that somehow the government's become in cahoots with the pharmaceutical company and say, hey, let's just get on the vaccine wagon. I went for a physical last week, Michael. Guess what? And my doctor, before asking me anything else, said, okay, where are we with the vaccines? What are we going to give you today? I'm like, none of them. I don't need any. I'm fine. We're good with the vaccine. Okay, down, doctor, down.
And this goes back to that ripping the Band-Aid off, simplifying things, getting back to, where are we going to draw the line at life for a good quality of life? How many of these vaccines are we going to give? I have to ask, I've never actually really met somebody from, out in Pennsylvania, where the Amish have decided to live a very specific life. They've kind of drawn their box where their quality of life is, and they don't want to step outside of that, from what I understand. And maybe somebody may say I'm erroneous in my comments there, but where are we going to draw the line? Am I going to have to go to the doctor every week and get a shot? I mean, I'm not a big fan of needles. I don't know about you.
So, Michael, tell me what ended up happening after you found out about that. What were some of the other issues that pertain to her immigration and putting through immigration for her?
Yeah. So, so finally we get this paperwork through, and, all of a sudden, one day after this, again, we've been going through a lot of problems at the airport, and we've been going through a lot of problems in general. And it's like every time we turn around, there's another problem. And I'm sure there's many Americans out there that can side with me. It's like, we feel like we're in a boat that's got a bunch of holes all over the place, and we're sticking our finger in all these holes. And as soon as we get those holes plugged, there's more stuff happening. Yeah. So, and we start to see certain patterns. And when these patterns happen, we start getting on edge, and we say, okay, something's not right. We start looking at our instincts, and we're saying, okay, something's wrong. And we need to trust those instincts. We really do. I mean, that's like protects us in life. And, so all this time passes. I mean, month after month after month, we're not hearing anything. And then all of a sudden, her working papers show up. Something about the green card, which I can't understand, that I guess something was going on, couldn't make heads or tails out of it, and our travel documents were not approved. And they said, hey, we want you to come to this, to your marriage interview in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. Okay. And so, I say to my wife, I said, we're in the process of moving from New Jersey to South Carolina. We've been through all this stuff in New Jersey. Let's just not go back to New Jersey. Let's just call them up, tell them to transfer. everything down to South Carolina. We'll start working with the office down there. And she says, we have both addresses. Just, let's just get this done. So I just said, okay, you hear your wife arguing, and you finally are like, all right, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to go. And so I rented a vehicle at our local airport and in South Carolina, and we drove all the way to New Jersey.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We go into this marriage interview, and the immigration officer is just zipping through all the questions. I mean, people have told me, you got to be on your game. You got to know everything. I mean, there is a checklist that you should have when you go into immigration. And if anybody is listening to this, mm-hmm. if you're not going into immigration to that interview with your lawyer, you are making a big mistake. Mm. You need to make sure that your lawyer is in that room with you during that interview. Mm-hmm. The days of, just go to the interview, don't worry about it, those days are over. Everything has changed in the last 6 months. I cannot be more vocal about that. You better have your attorney, and your attorney better be very present. Mm. Okay. And so I watched the officer just going through there, and I'm reading her body language, and I can already tell that my attorney's becoming unsettled, and I notice my wife is becoming very unsettled. And two men walk in, and they said, are you almost done with this? Are you wrapping this up? And I immediately, my hair stood up.
Oh, crap. Uh-huh.
I said, what is going on here? And, the officer's still continuing questions. And I don't want to hear questions at this point. I want to know what's going on. Mm. And finally, these two men walked back in, and they said, let's do this. We've got a time schedule. We got to get going. And they explain everything. Apparently, my wife is now about to be arrested by ICE. She's never done anything wrong in her life. She's never had, a criminal record. I don't even think she's ever even had a speeding ticket. I mean, she's 93 pounds, barely 5 foot tall. And she is the most gentle, kind-hearted woman. I mean, I cannot begin to speak in volumes mm-hmm. about my wife. We all have backgrounds. We all have pasts. We all come from questionable things in life. But what I've seen her do, with people, in the flight school and in the environment, I mean, just such a kind heart. And they literally arrest her, mm-hmm. and they take her to the county jail down, I believe it's Salem County. It's down by Cape May. They take her down to the county prison down there. Mm. Now, we have no idea what's going on. She's got no paperwork. I've got no paperwork. She's in tears. I'm trying to figure out what's going on, and I'm getting very angry. Mm. And I remember at one particular point, I was so angry mm-hmm. that I felt like I was almost going to pass out. And, mm-hmm. and in this day and age, you can't yell at anybody. You can't do anything. You have to stay calm. You have to, and I have a feeling most people, especially if they don't speak English or if they're not, I couldn't imagine how mm-hmm. they would react to such a thing. Yeah. And, so that's my next thing that I have to say to everyone. You have to remain calm, because what's going on right now, it's not right. You have to remain calm. Okay. You have to remain, because I could just tell from the body language of the people that were there, they just didn't agree with what was going on. And I still remember the guards at the facility, mm-hmm. Saying to me, man, how are you? When I got back the next day, they said, are you all right? Is everything fine? I mean, I could tell the humanitarian mm-hmm. nature that is America, because I can't be more clear than this. Mm. If you stand on my soil, uh-huh. if you stand on a ship or a platform flying my flag, or you stand in my presence on foreign soil, you stand under my wing. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We, Americans, we take care of our own. Yeah. That's just how it is. We will not stand for ignorance that harms the innocent in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. So tell me, what did the lawyers do? What happened from that point? Once they arrested her, were the lawyers able to talk to someone, begin to work things out? What did they tell you?
At first, it was complete confusion, absolute confusion, because there's a file, there's something in a file. We don't know what's in the file. Everything. And remember, my first duty is to protect my wife. I have no idea where my wife is at this point. She has just been taken from me, and I have no idea where they are sending her. Now, apparently they sent her to this county prison. They put her in a general holding cell with some intoxicated woman for the evening until things got processed, and they put her in her own cell, basically solitary. I guess I would call it solitary confinement. There may be people in the prison system that see it differently than I do, but that's what I would call solitary confinement. I cannot imagine the fear that was just put into my poor wife. She has no idea what's going on. Now, it'd be one thing if you committed a crime, okay? You broke the law, flat out broke the law. You killed somebody, you ran somebody over. I draw a hard line with that. But in this particular case, I'm just seeing an inefficient bureaucratic system that is stepping out of line. And so the first day goes by, we have no idea what's going on. Now, keep in mind, I had just moved down to the Carolinas. Everything that we had at our facility up in New Jersey, nothing's really there to so now I'm in hotels. And this is now starting to financially cut into me. And so this first night goes by, nobody knows what's going on. We're waiting, we're trying, we're calling this customer service line. And anybody listening to this, if you had to call that customer service line, my heart goes out to you. Calling those phone numbers and trying to just find out what's going on with your loved one. I can't imagine the heartache, especially if you do not speak English, to not know what is going on. And the fact that you can't get anybody on the phone and everybody's pointing fingers at each other, and you're now being exposed for the first time to all these different agencies, USCIS, ICE, and you just want answers. You just want to know where your loved one is.
Okay. What ended up happening next, the following day and the following weeks going forward?
Well, the next thing is they transferred her to this wonderful thing that we go back to the airports with, this P3 contract, this private-public partnership. They transferred her to a contracted facility up in Elizabeth, New Jersey, that's contracted to a company called Course Civic.
Okay.
We're talking about a privately run prison. This is unique. I mean, you've got people in there that are private contractors. This is interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
You're gonna love this. It's just underneath of the departure end of one of the runways for Newark Airport.
Wow.
So I feel like I'm standing on land that potentially was a part of Newark Airport at one time, and I'm starting to ask questions to myself with all the problems that we went through with the airport. My wife just got sent down to Salem County. Now all of a sudden she is up at this contracted facility in Elizabeth. I was totally freaked out.
Yeah.
The first night, they go through all this processing, so you're not able to visit your loved one. So I think, after 24 hours or something went by, first time that I could get up there to actually get to see my wife. And she, they have a whole schedule. You have to be there. You have to check in. It's this whole process where, you can't have your phone with you. You can't take paperwork and documents in with you. It's a really drug out process. And for the first time, I'm meeting other people and I'm hearing their stories. And the stories that I'm starting to hear, I can't believe what I'm listening to. I mean, we have innocent families that are being put into these detention centers, and some of the things that are keeping them in there, Christina, would blow your mind.
So they're not all related to immigration. They're all different sorts of so-called crimes?
Well, the thing is with immigration now, because we're going with the strict interpretation, this is where things get dangerous. Back to, ripping the Band-Aid off, cutting down all these regulations on the book. You start applying strict interpretation to these regulations, you got problems. And so I start listening.
I'm asking though, at the jail you're at or the facility, are these all the people who are being held up there as so-called criminals? Are they being held up there for immigration thing?
Yep, pure immigration, and everybody's story for immigration is different. Now, some of these people, and this is something really important, if you have any international listeners that are listening to this today, or if you have anybody that's listening that have friends that are planning on coming into the United States of America, if you come into the United States of America and you're at a border security check and you say, I'm in fear of my life, you have just made the biggest mistake of your life.
What?
If you say those words, you are going straight to that detention center. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it from what I understand from everybody that I've talked to. You make that statement, they are putting you right in there.
Why?
Apparently, the best way to deal with that situation is get them involved in something called indefinite detainment. And that's where we really run into this big, what I feel, human rights violation. You see, immigration is a matter of administrative law right now. It is not a matter of criminal law. And the question of the Constitution really comes into play here as to whether persons, as is referred to in the Constitution, applies to somebody standing on our sovereign soil. Back to my statement, if you stand anywhere near me, you're under my wing. And that's how I see things. Maybe Americans were a bit arrogant, but, you stand near me, you stand under my wing. That's how I've always looked at it. So persons, I would say that the Constitution applies.
Yeah.
But
now what is their reason for this? I mean, to me, it sounds like an outrageous. Now, let's just say, just keeping them there, keeping these people in the facility like that is a gross waste of taxpayers' money to begin with. If just keeping them there.
Absolute.
So what is their purpose?
Absolute.
Are they trying to say
absolute gross waste of our taxpayer money? Because you know what? I've been saying this a long time, because even when I finally started figuring out what was going on with my wife, my exact statement right off the bat was deport immediately. Get her out of the country. Get her back to her home country to at least be with her mother. Yeah. I'll contact somebody from the State Department, because that's why we have the State Department in the first place. That's why we have these consulates. That's why we have all these hardworking people for the State Department that work for us. I'm going to get somebody from the State Department to figure out what's going on, work with this situation, get a visa and a passport, get her back into the United States of America, and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Why waste the taxpayer money with indefinite detention? I mean, we're looking at a bill-back rate from what I've researched from somewhere between, I think, about $90 a day up to $133 a day, somewhere in that range. It gets billed back to the American taxpayer for every day that one of these individuals stays in indefinite detainment. I'm not okay with that.
No, well, neither am I. Neither am I. And I'm pretty sure every listener listening in is not okay with it either. This is absolutely insane. This is going on. And it really is scary, because I think I see this going in many other directions, because as you said, as we started the conversation with, there are so many violations that every single American could potentially make that could land us in a jail somewhere.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you as an immigrant that could be here on a green card, you could get picked up in a simple solution like a red light camera that takes a picture of your license plate. Actually, a really good example. I had a rental vehicle that apparently had a situation with a red light camera. I don't know if it was a valet, but then I go to find out that apparently it happened when I may or may not have rented the car, which turned into a situation that I never knew anything about, because they kept sending the paperwork to the rental car company that never notified me. And a year later, I end up with a suspended driver's license. Now, you could imagine you're an immigrant and this has happened to you, and you get hit with driving on a suspended driver's license because you got no idea that this has happened in conjunction with some other things. This could go out of line very quickly, and you could find yourself in indefinite detainment that fast.
Wow.
And so
Michael, this is just crazy stuff. I recall back in high school, we were going to take a trip to the USSR when it was communist Russia, and they were very careful to tell us all the rules and regulations we had to follow. There was like machine gun armed guards on every corner, and they would say, "Okay, beware, people. These are not little nice police officers like in New York City. They can go up and just ask them directions. They're trained to. You come up to them, you don't answer them, they shoot." But then they warned us, your constitution here does not follow you over there. So, but it goes to show that no matter what land you're in, even here, you don't know the laws, it can come to bite you. But more importantly, as you mentioned at the top of the hour, that it's more important that we begin to peel back all these crazy laws because they've become insane, where I don't think there's a person in the universe can follow every single law and regulation that has been put on the books. But, I have to stop you here. We are coming to the end of the hour. But before we head on out, I want you to let the audience know what would be your top advice for anyone out there struggling right now with an immigration issue, the family, friend, or whomever who's really right now dire need of some advice.
Wow. So that's the $1 million question. First and foremost, I've had so many conversations with everybody in the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice that have been involved with this immigration aspect, and these guys are overworked. Mm-hmm. They are overworked, and one of the things that could be the most detrimental thing to somebody's case, the judges right now, they're being put on details because there's not enough judges. Mm-hmm. And when that judge gets put on a detail with his clerk, he's not even in the office. So no matter what you do, that case file is not going anywhere. So the most important thing is that you got to stay calm until we as a country can address this, mm-hmm. until we can look at the humanitarian aspect of this. We've got to get these people out of there. We've got to get this debt off the American taxpayer. Mm-hmm. We've got to do something. Like you said, we need to streamline this. Yeah. And you know what? It happened in New Jersey. Everybody who is from New Jersey remembers the DMV and how bad it was. And overnight, I think it was McGreevy. McGreevy that fixed the DMV, and it got streamlined almost instantaneously. We have to streamline immigration. But until that happens, you got to be patient, number one. Number two, you got to be careful until this gets situated. I cannot express more than anything right now. If you have a green card, you have to be very careful what goes on. And if you're overseas right now and you have a green card and you may have done something, you better really make sure your background is clean before you come into the United States of America. Because right now, there was a person that had a shoplifting violation in 2013 that they took care of and they paid for it. They went on vacation. They had been a resident alien for 38 years in the United States of America. They went on vacation and they came back from vacation in the United States of America. They were put into that detention center with my wife. And on top of that, if you end up in that detention center and that detention center fills up, they have the ability to transfer you to these supermax facilities, like what happened to my wife, where when they transfer you to one of those, like where she is right now up in Goshen, New York, there are real prisoners intermixed with a regular prison population that's up there. Yeah. And that prison population that's in the facility that she was at initially, that contracted private facility, one of the most interesting things that my wife said to me was after several weeks in there, their idea of an outdoor area was a hole in the ground surrounded by 4 brick walls with several skylights cut into the roof. When she got to that Supermax facility up in New York, in Goshen, New York, that was the first time she got to look at the sun in 4 weeks.
Wow. And this is horrible. These are just people who have not committed any crimes, who are being tossed about and being treated like severe criminals. And for a long time, that is another thing that needs to be fixed, our whole prison industrial complex. I mean, we have people who've smoked a little pot and are ending up in prison for the next 30 years. Then someone who rapes a little kid gets out in 5. Hello, messed up system for sure. Yeah.
Very.
I think what citizens not dealing with this horrible situation themselves can do is get on the phone to your congressmen, senators, and demand that they get some of these darn regulations and laws off the books and have people being treated with, humanely and start to, they work for us. I think one thing I see with a lot of senators and congressmen is, and even a city council and such, is people treat them like gods. Newsflash, these people are public servants. I know they act like gods and people are like taking pictures of them and like, ooh, my senator. I'm like, they should be doing that to us. They are public servants working for us. So hold them accountable and get them to get their asses out there and change this, because this is horrible. And Michael, I just
and that
go. Yes.
And, one thing that I could add to that, and I have to be very clear about this, our Congress and our Senate have really been stripped of their authoritative powers. And, they are missing a lot of tools that they used to have in their toolboxes. So if you go to your congressman for assistance, if your family member has been detained, there is only so much the congressman or senator can do, especially if it's an illegal matter. So you have to get an attorney. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You're going to have to pay for it. The congressman, and believe me, I have spoken with them during this process. There is only so much that they can do once this happens. So yes, getting our congressman and helping our congressman, but we're going to need a little bit of a bigger change. And so, again, back to that ripping that Band-Aid off, getting a lot of these rules and regulations off the books, we're going to need that. And we're going to need an effective change agent. We need a really effective change agent out there now, bringing this information to light, helping everybody, coming up with a good game plan, because the only way we're going to fix immigration, it's not going to be one person. It's going to be everybody working together as a team and holding everybody accountable.
Yes. And that's the same that goes for all the big issues in this country. I think one thing that I've even done is like, oh, we got a problem, just call our senator or vote for the next time we go to the voting poll. But it's become to the point where we can't wait for someone else to fix the problem. As you said, it's got to be where everyone jumps in and does something.
Yep.
Whatever, like one person said on my show not too long ago, whatever your great passion is, if you're pulled to helping people or kids being harmed and sold into sex trafficking, then let that be it. If you're pulled into immigration, then work with all your might and strength to really fix that. Yes, Michael, I thought you had something else you wanted to add.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. This is time that we as Americans, especially the younger generation like myself, we have to step up. We got to take charge. When I worked on that project at the airport, I never backed down. I upset a lot of people. I cracked a lot of eggs open. A lot of it was really unintentional. But, the new generation, we've got to step up. We've got to take charge. And, we can't just hide in the basements or the shadows of the caves. We've got to get out there. We've got to get vocal. And I hate to say this, but to any next entrepreneur listening on the line or next change agent, this isn't going to be an easy fight. You're going to get hit, you're going to get hurt, but you got to do it. You got to step up. If you don't, we're not going to get change.
Absolutely. Well, Michael, this has been truly inspirational having you share your story this evening, giving people hope that we can, as a people, come together and make change. I thank you so much for all you've done to share, and I hope all the best for you and your wife, that you can work through this and be together again here in the United States. Thank you so much, Michael, for coming to Savvy Business Radio and sharing your story tonight.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you.
Here's an excerpt of our interview with Mayma Carmel of Tiger Lily Foundation, sharing her extraordinary journey and triumph over breast cancer. Air date for this episode is August 29th, 2014, and you can hear this episode on our station on Savvy Business Radio on Blog Talk Radio.
I lost my idea of who I thought I was and who I was going to be. I lost my faith in God. Really? And so all I had left for me was my daughter, and she's the reason why. She was my beacon, because sometimes I want to give up and she would look at me and she would tell, I don't know how she would know, and she would ask me, are you going to die? And I had to push forward. But long story short, after going through months of depression, one morning I just got up and I was like, I can't take it anymore. I'm just so depressed and I can't live like this. So I just would cry and cry. My mother found me in the shower one morning crying, and she's like, you just can't. You have to figure out how to get yourself out of this depression. So I prayed to God one night and I just said to him, if you restore my spirit, I'll give my life to you in service. And I was so angry. I was begging and cursing at the same time at him or her.
Yeah.
And I went to bed. I was just desperate. And the next morning I got up and I was a different person.
Yeah.
And I'm a very spiritual person. I wouldn't say religious, but very spiritual. And I've read about people saying that they've come into contact with, the universal power or God and whatever they want to call him. But I just thought it was like a fable, a story.
Mm-hmm.
But when it happens to you, it's something that you can never, it's just amazing when something like that big that's always there, but you don't know it's there, when it touches you and comes around you and becomes part of you deeply. And so I got up that morning and I said, okay, oh my God, he showed up or she showed up. So now my promise is to make a difference in the life of other women going through this situation. And so I'm like, okay, you said to me, if you did your part, I have to do my part. Well, what is that? And that's how the whole journey began with Tiger Lily. That's how it started. And now we're in 43 states nationwide.
That's phenomenal. Mema, and what surprises me is that it was an instant change. That's how you know it's a miracle. But it's wow, just an amazing, amazing story. And when you lost your faith, was there any time that you just felt kind of like God wasn't there for you, or it kind of dissipated from your life at that moment?
I was pissed.
Yeah, I can.
I mean, I was pissed. I mean, I've never been so angry in my life. Looking back at how I'm afraid of how I was afraid. Or angry. I was so angry. I was like a walking, seething ball of anger, because I literally been through 3 wars, never lost my faith, been held at gunpoint, didn't lose my faith. I gone through an assault when I was a teenager by a friend who I trusted, didn't lose my faith. I've been hit by lightning at 12. I still trusted that I would get through life and do this thing that God wanted me to do. And then, we came here. My family had lost everything in the war. So there are literally about 9 people living in a small apartment with just 2 bedrooms. And I slept on the couch for, I don't know, 4 years. So we literally had nothing. We don't have a lot of food, and I had to work and take care of my family and contribute to the household at 15, 16 years old for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, looking back at making all the sacrifices I did, but still maintaining my hope and my faith and my need to give back.
Mm-hmm.
And then to have cancer, I was thinking, are you seriously kidding me?
Yeah, right.
Seriously, dude? Are you for real?
So it was like the breaking point. Enough is enough.
Done. Yeah, enough is enough.
Yeah.
But the thing is that the best was yet to come, because it wasn't about the cancer. The cancer was only a milestone. It was a catalyst for me, because it really had made me stop, because I think sometimes we're thinking about the end result, not the journey, for one. And then all the things I have been through have been preparing me for Tiger Lily and for being who I am now, because we ask God to give us this great thing to do, but then you have to have the fortitude to carry it forward, because the thing that he was asking me to do, that I had to accept his hand and hold and say, yes, this is, making a deal. I'm going to do this thing, like building a foundation from scratch, without having no training, no contacts. I literally worked 9 to 5 and didn't know anything about networking, nonprofit fundraising, volunteerism, board development. I didn't know anybody. No one knew who I was. So to begin from there and build this thing while being a single mom, while going through chemotherapy, was a huge deal. And I don't know how I did it sometimes, because I look back at women that we helped through Tiger Lily, and these girls are in the middle of treatment. It's overwhelming. It affects their job, their lives. I don't know how I did it. That's why I know it had to have been a miracle, because I personally couldn't have done that on my own. Even now, being fully healthy and well, it's a lot of work. So I really believe in, more so than ever, in God and in the universe and in the spiritual realm, because something made me do that and sustain me through, with a 3-year-old and having no money for myself to build this organization. So it was really amazing. And so I literally began to ask people that I didn't know for help. I would Google strangers who I thought might be good for my organization. I would look people up on the internet and just call them and say who I was. Or I go to events and meet people. And it literally is how I began a campaign of faith to recruit people that could help me be advisors for the foundation, that could offer me support. And as you know, building a business, you make mistakes, you have challenges, but you have to hold your vision, because my vision was not about me. It's about other people's lives that need to be impacted. Not just with cancer, but, in terms of their soul, their work, their soul purpose on this earth. because God has shown me that my purpose was to share love with other people and share hope. And cancer was a vehicle through which he awakened me. So I had to get people that message, and that's how I started.
Wow. And thinking about it, a lot of people who've come on this show actually started their business and their life purpose based on some crisis that came into their life. Not always health related, but a crisis. And now I kind of think, is it God's way of kind of opening us up to expand and grow and push forward to our greater selves?